They didn't just fire me. They did it in front of everyone. 32 people. Glass walls. Monday morning meeting. And my boss smiled while doing it. Like it was entertainment. Like I was the punchline. Myra, he said, leaning back in his chair, fingers steepled like he was about to deliver wisdom instead of humiliation. We need people here who understand value. A few people laughed. Not loudly, not openly, but enough. Enough to let me know they agreed. I stood there. Didn't argue. Didn't defend myself. Because the truth was, he had no idea what he was saying. Effective immediately, he continued. Your position has been terminated. Terminated. Not let go. Not we appreciate your work. Terminated. Like I was a problem they were finally allowed to remove. I nodded once. Slow. Controlled. Picked up my notebook. Closed it. And said the only thing that mattered. Understood. That's when he smirked. That little, satisfied smile of a man who thought he had just proven something. Like he had won. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 3 floors above that glass room, my name was already in a file he had never seen. A file labeled, Equity Distribution, Confidential. I walked out without looking back. Not at him. Not at the people who suddenly found their screens very interesting. Not at the assistant who avoided eye contact like silence could erase what just happened. Because humiliation only works when the other person has power over you. And that morning, they thought he did. But here's the part no one in that room understood. I didn't get that job by accident. And I didn't stay there for 3 years because I needed it. I stayed because I was watching. 3 years earlier, when I first walked into that building, I already knew something was off. The numbers didn't match the growth. The expansion didn't match the revenue. And the people at the top? They weren't building something. They were hiding something. So I stayed quiet, took notes, learned everything. Because sometimes, the fastest way to power is letting people believe you don't have any. And my boss, Daniel Reeves, was the kind of man who believed exactly that. Daniel Reeves. He built his reputation on confidence, on control, on making people feel small enough that they never questioned him. And for 3 years, I let him believe I was one of those people. The quiet one, the replaceable one, the one who took notes in meetings and never interrupted. But what he never noticed was what I was writing down. Every number, every deal, every inconsistency. Because while he was busy performing power, I was tracking it. And that meeting, that public firing, that moment he thought defined me, that was the first real mistake he ever made. Because now, he had removed the only person who had been quietly protecting him, and he didn't even know it. By the time I stepped outside the building, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Is this Myra Collins? The voice was calm, professional, controlled. Yes. Good. We've been trying to reach you. A pause. Just long enough to shift something in the air. There's a board meeting this Thursday. I stopped walking. You'll need to attend. Another pause. After all, you are one of the stakeholders. Silence. Because in that moment, everything changed. And somewhere 3 floors above that glass room, my former boss was probably still smiling. He just didn't know how fast that was about to disappear. I didn't go home. I didn't celebrate. I didn't call anyone. I went to a cafe 2 blocks away, sat by the window, and opened my laptop. Because excitement is loud. And power is quiet. Stakeholder. The word kept repeating in my head. Not employee. Not former employee. Stakeholder. Which meant one thing. I wasn't just involved in the company. I had influence over it. But influence is useless if you don't understand how deep it goes. I logged into an account I hadn't touched in months. A secure portal. Layered authentication. Private access. The kind of system employees don't even know exists. The screen loaded slowly, almost deliberately. And then, there it was. Equity holdings, 7.3%. I stared at the number. Not because I didn't know it was there, but because of what it meant now. 3 years ago, that percentage was nothing. A technical allocation, a silent agreement, a piece of something unfinished. But today, 7.3% was enough to do damage, especially when the rest of the board didn't trust each other. I leaned back in my chair, exhaled slowly, because suddenly, that meeting on Thursday wasn't just a formality. It was a battlefield. And Daniel Reeves had no idea I was even invited. Daniel Reeves. I opened another file, one I had built quietly over 3 years. Dates, transactions, internal memos, deleted reports, patterns. At first, it didn't make sense. Small inconsistencies, minor gaps, things you could easily dismiss if you weren't paying attention. But I was. Because I wasn't there to succeed. I was there to understand. And what I understood now was dangerous. There were payments being rerouted, not stolen, not exactly, just moved, shifted through layers of accounts, until they disappeared into something that didn't officially exist. And every time that happened, one name kept appearing in the approval chain. Daniel Reeves. Not directly, never obvious, but consistent. Too consistent to ignore. I closed the file, looked out the window, watched people pass by like nothing had changed. But everything had, because now I wasn't just someone who had been fired. I was someone who knew exactly why. My phone buzzed again. This time, a message. Unknown number. Thursday, 9 a.m. Don't be late. No signature. No explanation. But I didn't need one. Because people like that, they don't invite you unless they need something. And if they needed me, that meant one thing. They were already losing control. I closed my laptop, finished my coffee, stood up, and for the first time since that meeting, I smiled. Not because of revenge, not because of what was coming, but because of timing. They thought they removed me before I became a problem. But in reality, they removed me right before I became impossible to ignore. Thursday morning came faster than expected. Same building, same glass walls, same people walking in like they owned the place. The only difference was me. No badge, no laptop bag, no hesitation. At the front desk, the assistant looked up, paused. Recognition flickered across her face. "You don't work here anymore," she said carefully. I nodded. Correct. A beat of silence. "Then you can't." "I'm here for the board meeting." That stopped her. Completely. Because confusion is the first crack in authority. "I don't have your name on the list," she said. I stepped closer. Calm. Measured. "Check again." She did. Faster this time. And then, there it was. Her expression changed. Subtly. But enough. Oh, exactly. Oh, because now, I wasn't invisible anymore. "Top floor," she said quickly. I thanked her, turned, walked toward the elevator. And as the doors closed, I caught my reflection. Same face, same person, but not the same position. Because 3 floors above, there was a room full of people who thought they were about to have a normal meeting. They weren't. And one of them was about to realize he had just fired the worst possible person. The boardroom was nothing like the meeting room downstairs. No glass walls, no audience, no performance, just silence. Heavy, measured, expensive. 8 people sat around the table. No laptops open, no small talk. Because this wasn't a meeting. This was control. I stepped inside. No one greeted me, but every single person looked up. And in that moment, I saw it. Recognition. Not of who I was, but of what I represented. A variable, an unknown, a problem or a solution. And then, his voice. "Excuse me." Sharp, controlled, familiar. "Daniel Reeves. Daniel Reeves." I turned. He was already standing, not smiling anymore, not relaxed, confused. "You're not supposed to be here." There it was. The first crack. I didn't rush to respond. Didn't defend myself. I simply walked to the table, placed a folder in front of the empty chair, and sat down. Across from him. "I was invited," I said calmly. Silence. The kind that spreads from one person to another until the entire room feels it. One of the board members leaned forward. Older. Precise. The kind of man who didn't waste words. "Name? Myra Collins." A pause. Then he nodded slightly, almost to himself. "Right." That one word changed everything. Because now, it wasn't a question anymore. I belonged there. Daniel didn't sit down right away. He was still processing, still trying to understand how someone he had publicly erased was now sitting at the same table as him. "How exactly," he said slowly, "is she relevant to this meeting?" Not aggressive. Not yet. But controlled anger is always more dangerous. Another board member spoke. This one didn't even look at Daniel. "She holds equity." Simple. Clean. Final. Daniel blinked. Once. Then again. Because that sentence wasn't something he could dismiss. "How much?" And that was the moment everything shifted. Because the answer wasn't just a number. It was leverage. 7.3%. Silence. Not shocked. Not loud. Just heavy. Because everyone in that room knew what that meant. Voting power. Influence. Access. And suddenly, I wasn't the girl he fired anymore. I was someone he had no control over. Daniel finally sat down. Slowly. But now, he wasn't leaning back anymore. He was leaning forward, watching me, studying me, trying to figure out how he missed this. And the truth? He didn't miss it. He never looked. "Let's proceed," the chairman said. And just like that, the meeting began. Financial reports, projections, growth strategies, all the things that made the company look stable, clean, successful. But I wasn't listening to what they were saying. I was listening to what they were avoiding. Because no one mentioned the inconsistencies. No one mentioned the missing funds. No one mentioned the pattern. And that told me everything. They knew, maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to stay quiet until they couldn't anymore. About 40 minutes in, I closed my folder. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. And every head turned, because silence, at the right moment, is louder than anything else. "I have a question," I said. Daniel's jaw tightened. Of course it did. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. "Yes," the chairman said. I slid a single document across the table. Not a stack. Not a report. Just one page. Simple. Clear. Dangerous. "Can someone explain," I said calmly, "why these transfers were approved without full board visibility?" No one answered immediately, but they all looked at it. And then, almost at the same time, they looked at him, Daniel Reeves. And that was the moment his control started to slip. Because for the first time, he wasn't the one asking questions. He was the one being watched, because the document in front of them was too simple to ignore. No complicated language. No legal framing. Just numbers. Dates. Transfers. A pattern. And patterns are impossible to argue with. Daniel didn't touch the paper right away. He looked at me first. Not angry. Not yet. Careful. Like he was trying to decide how dangerous I really was. Then he picked it up. Scanned it. Once. Twice. And for the first time since I had ever known him, he hesitated. "It's incomplete," he said finally. There it was. Deflection. Not denial. Because denial would mean confidence. And he didn't have that anymore. I leaned back slightly. Calm. "You're right," I said. That caught him off guard. because he expected resistance, not agreement. It is incomplete, I continued. And then I opened my folder, slowly, and placed 3 more documents on the table. Now it's not. Silence. Heavy. Sharp. Because what was once a question was now evidence. One of the board members reached for the papers, flipped through them, faster with each page, and then stopped, right on the last line. This account, he said slowly, isn't listed in any official report. Exactly. I looked at Daniel. This time, he didn't hold eye contact. Just for a second. But that was enough. Because power doesn't disappear all at once. It cracks. And then it spreads. These transfers, another voice said, they've been happening for over 2 years. Not a question. A statement. And statements are harder to escape. Daniel leaned forward, hands clasped, trying to rebuild control. There are explanations for internal allocations. Then explain them. I didn't raise my voice, didn't interrupt harshly, but I didn't let him finish either. And that was new, because no one ever cut him off. Until now. The room shifted. Subtly. Not in sound. Not in movement. But in alignment. Because now, they weren't looking at him as the authority. They were looking at him as a risk. Another board member spoke. Why weren't these disclosed? No anger. Just precision. The kind that forces answers. Daniel exhaled slowly. And I could see it. The calculation. How much to admit? How much to hide? But the problem was, he was already too late. Because this wasn't about suspicion anymore. It was about proof. These were temporary reallocations, he said. Temporary. A word designed to sound harmless. But money doesn't disappear temporarily. It moves. And it leaves a trail. I leaned forward slightly. Then where did it go? Silence. And there it was again. That hesitation. But this time, it lasted longer. Too long. Because in rooms like this, delay is admission. The chairman finally spoke. Daniel, he said quietly, I suggest you answer the question. Not aggressive, but final. And just like that, Daniel Reeves was no longer in control of the room. Daniel Reeves. He looked around the table. And for the first time, no one was on his side. Because power built on perception collapses the moment people stop believing in it. And right now, they didn't. Daniel cleared his throat. It was an external structure, he said. Careful wording. Too careful. For strategic flexibility. There it was again. Words designed to confuse. But confusion only works when no one understands the system. And unfortunately for him, I did. Off-book account, I said. Simple. Direct. Irrefutable. Another silence. But this one was different. Because now, everyone understood. Not just that something was wrong, but how wrong it was. How much? The question came from the end of the table. Daniel didn't answer immediately, which meant one thing. It was worse than they thought. I slid the final document forward. No hesitation. $18.4 million. Silence. Absolute. Because numbers like that don't just damage reputations. They end them. Daniel looked at me. Really looked this time. Not as an employee. Not as someone beneath him. But as the person who had just ended his career. You've been tracking this, he said quietly. Not a question. Recognition. For 3 years, I replied. And that was the moment it fully collapsed. Because everything he thought he controlled had been observed, recorded, understood, by the one person he dismissed. The chairman closed the folder. Effective immediately, he said, you are suspended pending investigation. No emotion, no hesitation. Because at this level, decisions aren't personal. They're final. Daniel didn't argue, didn't defend himself. Because there was nothing left to defend. Security was called. Quietly, discreetly. But everyone in that room knew what it meant. He stood up slowly. And for a brief moment, Our eyes met again. No anger, just something else. Understanding. Because now, he knew exactly. When he lost. Not today. Not in this room. But 3 days earlier. When he stood in front of 32 people. And decided. To fire me. He walked out. No audience this time. No performance. Just silence. The door closed behind him. And just like that, he was gone. The chairman turned to me. You should have brought this sooner. I nodded slightly. Timing matters. A pause. Then, the smallest hint of approval. Because in rooms like this, they don't reward noise. They reward control. And today, I had it. 3 days later, an internal announcement went out. Leadership changes. Structural review. Ongoing investigation. Carefully worded. Clean. But everyone knew what really happened. As for me, I didn't go back to my desk. Didn't return to my old role. Because I didn't need it. Instead, I got an offer. Not as an employee, but as something else. Advisor. Oversight. Influence. Because once you prove you understand the system, they don't put you back inside it. They give you control over it. And sometimes, the most powerful move isn't fighting back when you're humiliated. It's waiting, watching, and choosing the exact moment when everything shifts. Because the truth is, he didn't fire me. He exposed himself. And I just made sure everyone saw it. Because the truth is, he didn't fire me. He exposed himself. And I just made sure everyone saw it. And if you've ever been underestimated, if someone ever made you feel small, just because they thought they had power, remember this. Silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes, it means you're waiting for the right moment. If this story hit you, drop a like. And if you want more stories about power, betrayal, and quiet revenge, make sure you subscribe, because the next one might be even worse.